So today we are just going to cover overview of the SiteMinder, the component, and the modules, right? Which modules we are going to take in this session. So how I would start with this training is right. We will start with the basics like the SiteMinder component, how these component are needed in the CA SiteMinder
Okay.
environment and how they interact with each other, right? And then after that is complete, it will also release the federation part that will be 7 2.0 and the practical implementation and how that is being used nowadays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Within different organization, and we will also have some Q&A session for the doubt clearance, right? If you have doubt on any module or any topic, right? And the commonly asked questions, which are generally used on the IAM framework, right? So
Yeah,
let's
sure.
start with the let's start with the basic. So the basic thing is like what is single sign-on, right? So if we say in the layman's terms, single sign-on is a simple process by which a user, a user or end user will access one application using a user ID password or secure ID or key fobs or any other authentication and authorization method will access the application, right, once, and then he is allowed to access multiple application web application from the same browser. So this is a simple definition of the single sign-on. Okay, so single sign-on has like two parts. What is authentication and what is authorization? So this is mainly asked like if you go to the interview, they want to know if you understand these concepts, what is authentication and what is authorization. So let's start with the authentication. Authentication will be like if you log in, let's say you have some application A, let's call that, and you access that application, and then it prompts you to log in with some user ID and password. You provide that user ID and password. The process of validating those user ID and password is known as authentication. Means you have some credentials, valid credentials. The process of validating that will be called authentication. And the authorization part is right. Okay, you have valid user ID and password, but do you really have access, access or permission to access that page or application or a resource of that application? It will be called authorization. So one of the very good example will be like this. So you have one application A, let's call that, and you have two pages. One is called home.html. The other page is called, let's say, manager.html, right? So we have some policy placed there that home page should be every user who has valid credential will be able to access home home page of that application. So you log into that application with a valid user ID and password. You are authenticated and authorized. You are displayed the home page. right? But then you navigate to the manager section of that page. Let's say you click, there's some link, you click on manager, right? But it prompts you that you don't have sufficient access or sufficient privileges to access that page. You might have seen on some sites or maybe somewhere in the application. So that is called authorization. You are not authorized to access that page until and unless you have some requirement met, maybe some group, maybe you have some special attribute to your profile, right? Or something like that. Something additional is needed. After that, you will be allowed to access manager page. I hope these two concepts are clear.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, great. So now let's see how the SiteMinder will come into the picture. So what SiteMinder is a web access management tool. We call it web web access management. So it's mainly used to protect the web applications, right? So what are the major component of CA SiteMinder? First, we have the policy server. Policy server is the main brain of the CS SiteMinder, where all the authentication, authorization, all the policies, right? All the configuration will take place. That, that is the policy server. Then we have policy store and key store. So policy store and key store are the places where all this policy which you create right in the policy server will be stored. So that policy server can just go to that uh, that database, or let's say if you are not using database, then you are using some LDAP directory, right? Where it can go and fetch all its objects, all its attribute, right? So that is policy store. So you can use same policy store as a key store as well. What key store is? So SiteMinder has a concept of like present key, future key, and the past key. How these keys come into the picture is like all the communication eh, which is done between different policy server. Like let's say you have two policy server, right? If they want to communicate with each other, right? So all the communication is encrypted, and all the communication between SiteMinder and this web agent, right? That is also encrypted. That is the the encryption is done with these keys. There are three keys: past key, present key, and the future key. And we will talk more about this in our upcoming sessions. And the third component we have is session store. So session store is a optional component for the CS segmenter. I say optional because you really don't need it to make the CA SiteMinder environment work. But if you have special requirement for your use case, right, for the CS SiteMinder, then you will use the session store. So as a name suggests, session store will be some directory, some LDAP directory or some database where you are going to store all the user sessions so that you can refer to those sessions in the future. So it is mainly used for two purposes, for the persistent session and for the auditing purpose. So when I say persistent session, that means uh, it, uh, in term of session, right? Sessions are of like two kind of persistent and the non-persistent. Non-persistent session are like if you log into some application, right? And your session cookie uh, is stored in your browser. And if you close that browser and clear your cache and cookies from the browser, right? And you try to access that application again. So your all detail is gone because it was stored in your browser cache. So you again have to start all the process again. Provide a user ID, password. If your OTP configured, keep that, blah blah blah. So that process is called in persistent session. In case of persistent session, the session is stored on the server side, not in uh, the memory of the server who is creating that session. So let's say if you clear the cache and cookie, right, and the browser will check, okay, this user is try to access uh, access this website again. I already have some session stored which is still active. Let's say session is valid for uh, 8 hours, right? And your session is still active. So what the server is going to do, it's going to pick that session and send it to you over the browser again. So you don't have to follow the all login process again. So this is called persistent session. That this feature can be achieved with the use of session store. Okay. And moving to the fourth component, which is user store. So user store is nothing. It's going to be a user directory like LDAP directory where all the user information like user ID and password and it's all attribute they are stored. So it can communicate to the user store directly to check whether the user what user ID and password I'm getting, right? The policy service getting are correct or not. So that is the user store. And the fifth component we have for the CA SiteMinder is admin UI. So admin UI is a GUI, uh, GUI interface for the CA SiteMinder policy server, where you can easily log in with the admin credential and i- interact with the policy server and configure different policy rules, application, all those things with the policy server. So it's like a mandatory component, and it runs on the JBoss application. So that's the fifth component. And moving to the sixth component, which is web agent. So single sign-on can be achieved like via different method, uh, like like on the basis of web agent, right? If you install some web agent on some server, you will protect that application, and then you will trigger the authentication authorization flow, and it can also be achieved by federation as well, right? So for the federation, there are different requirement for that. So it's like a higher version of what we use uh, web agents. Sign on. And the seventh component is CA secure proxy. So secure proxy is a optional component. Only it is needed for two things. First thing, it provide the federation capability to the policy server, CA policy server, and it also acts as a forward proxy. So let's say you want to, there are some applications who don't want the web agent to be installed on their application server or web server, but we still want to protect those applications. So that thing is achieved by CA secure proxy, or it is nowadays called CA access gateway. So it's like a proxy server, forward proxy. What it will do, it will create all the configuration on its end, and it's protecting the application on the network domain. So I will talk more about this in this session. Okay, moving. So these are the main components of the CA SiteMinder. I hope that is clear. Let me know if you have some doubt, or you want me to repeat
No
those.
doubt. We can
Okay,
proceed further.
okay, great. So now let's come to the single sign-on based on the agent. So as I told you, how agent-based single sign-on will work is like you will install the web agent on some web server or application server, configure it with the CA policies server, right? And then all the requests coming to that web server will go through the web agent, and it will talk to the policies server to check all the information whether it's protected or not, all those things. But there are some conditions to agent-based single sign-on. So this is a quite common interview question as well. So they will ask you like something um, like what are the conditions for the agent-based single sign-on, or just will say, okay, I have application A, which is uh, with some web agent, and application B, and I want to achieve single sign-on between these two applications. How that can be achieved, right? And you have all the web agent and all this configured. So there are four parameters we need to keep in mind. So both the applications need to use the same user store. That means same store where they can be used to validate the user credentials. Same store, same user store. Second parameter is both applications should be in same cookie domain. Cookie domain means, let's say I have application XYZ dot uh, dot lab.com, and then I have application B abc.lab.com. So .lab.com, right? That is a cookie domain of these two applications. So this domain has to be same. Like it it has to be two. If you configured it for two, right? The cookie domain then has to be two, and it has to be .lab.com on the both the application. Then only they can share the cookies between each other. The hashed cookie. And the third requirement is like auth scheme. Auth scheme is like authentication scheme. So each authentication will have some level assigned to it. Say, let's say 5 is a minimum, and like 100 is a maximum in CS SiteMinder. So the higher you go is the higher the level of protection level. So both the application A and application B, they need to have like a same authentication scheme. So let's say if you choose auth scheme level 10 for application A and auth scheme level 15 for application B, but they still use the same user store, same cookie domain. The single sign-on will not work. So you will be easily able to log into the application A, but you cannot. But when you try to access the application B, right, at that time, you will be thrown the login page again because the auth scheme level is not the same. One is of lower, one is of higher. So if the auth scheme level are same, you can easily or seamlessly access both the application. So how that works is like it has to be the same or higher level auth scheme can access the lower level auth scheme application. So 15, let's say 15 can easily access level 10, 14. These it can easily access, but a lower application, uh, the application with a lower auth scheme cannot access the higher level auth scheme. So this is a simple diagram to give all the like a better clear picture, right? So this is a user, this is some web server with web agent installed, and it is protecting some resource. So web agent will communicate with the policy server, right? And policy server, it does all the authentication, authorization, administration, and accounting. These are the main four processes. And there's an admin UI hosted on that with which you can easily access policy server. User store is the place where we talked about where the user information is going to be stored, and policy server is the policy store is the place where all the information object of the policy server are going to be stored. Right. So let's start the web agent. Um, okay. Um, yeah. So I have some web server which is installed on this location. It's a Apache web server, right? And okay, before coming to that, let me check the policy server process. So how we check the policy server process is like SM pol or SM policy server. This process is up. That means your policy server is up and running. And let me show you the user store as well. Okay, so I've created two as a like for the testing, right? One user store, one policy store. So policy store has all the information. So I'm using OOD. Uh, if you are uh, familiar with, it's like product from the Oracle. Oracle Unified Directory is a LDAP instance. So one instance for the policy store, one instance for the user store, and one policy server, and have like and one web server, Apache based. So what I have done here, right? I will show you. This is the webagent.conf. Just Apache. Hmm. So So I've installed my web agent in this directory, web agent. Okay, here my web agent is installed and I configured it here. So let's take a look at the Apache configuration file. So when you install the web agent, right? So there are some parameters which are added to the configuration file. For example, if you see my screen here, right? It is so since this is a Apache web server, so it is loading some module which is called libmod sm24.so, and then it is passing the web agent configuration file in sm init file, right? So Apache is very standard web server used in most of the organization. So what this module does, it tells Apache that every request that is going to come to you, right? I am going to intercept that. The web agent will intercept that request and pass it to the policy server. How that is going to do with the help of this module and this configuration file, web agent configuration file. Okay, so these are the two very important parameters that are generally used or asked in the interviews if they want to like know about the flow, right? How the flow is uh, going to go from a web server to the policy server, and they expect you to explain these modules, like what this module going to do and how this how the web agent will intercept the request. So these two configuration files, with the help of these two configuration files. So let's see if our process, web agent process is up or not. So the process name is LLAWP. LLAWP is low level working agent working process. Okay, so you see Apache 24, this is the path where web agent conf is, and this is for Apache 24, it's up. So let's take a look at the webagent.com. So first first thing which we have is like host configuration file. Uh, so host configuration file is something like which Webagent uses to find out where it has to communicate, to which host it has to communicate, and how it will communicate. That is the SM host. We will take a look at the SM host as well. And then we have the ACO or agent configuration object. So this is the parameter that we create on the SiteMinder policy server. That's how uh, the policy server will know, okay, I have to go to this ACO and fetch all the configuration detail, how this application is configured or not, right? And the third parameter is enable web agent. Yes. So that means web agent is enabled on this server. If you move it to no, right, that means web agent will stop working. And this is server path, like where is the configuration path of this server. And the other important plugin is this one, lib http plugin.so. This is the plugin for the web servers, especially for HTTP. HTTPDs, that means the Apache web server. Sorry. So Let's not take a look at the SM host. So in the SM host configuration file, right? First thing is like host name. This is like something we define by which the policy server will know, okay, this is the this is the host name which I have to check in my policy store. Do I have that host name or not? So this is give the name, you can give it to anything. So I've given Apache hyphen agent dot trusted host name. So at the time of web agent configuration, right, you give this trusted host name. Um, so then this thing is get stored on the CA SiteMinder policy store. Then we have share secret. So this is like some key, some hash value, right? Some salted hash, uh, which which is used to which is used for the encrypted communication between web agent and the policy server. So this thing can be decrypted with the use of the keys, the pass key, present key, and the future key, and enable the. So the other important parameter is host configuration object. Host configuration object, I will show you more on this. What that is, it's basically some parameter where you can define like multiple policies, server or failover configuration, these kind of things you can define in the host configuration uh, object, the policy server. So if you can define multiple policy server configuration here as well. So I only have one, so I've defined the one policy server and its port. So right now I'm using 4441, right? So there are like four ports on the policy server: 44441, 2, and 3, and 4. So each of these port have different purpose. Of 4441 is for the web agent communication. 44442 is used for the authentication, and 3 is used for the authorization, and 4 is used for the auditing purpose, like r- writing some logs, right, on the web server or web agent. It is done by those. And request the timeout is like mm, number of seconds the policy the web agent will wait if it loses communication with the policy server, and it will try after that time. Okay, so let me open. mm, if you want to start the mainnet, you can just uh, go to this path, OPTCA, like SiteMinder home, then admin UI bin, and you can use this one no dot slash standalone and then ampersand to start the admin UI. Okay, that is up. So the current version we have for the SiteMinder is 12.8.8. Okay. Okay, let's see these components again here. So how you create this is like first you do is like go to agents and you create one fabric. You can give them its name, anything you want, right? Uh, I've given Apache agent, so it's same like here. If you see, it's SEO is Apache tester. So you see the ACO, which was fabrication.com, is the same, which pass it here and host, first host. So you see, this is the host name which we have defined in our configuration file, host name in SM host. Same will be here. This is the trusted host name. And let's go to host configuration object. So that the host configuration object. It is defined as SM and CO. Let's check this work easily. So I define my policy server. All the ports are defined here. If you want to add the one more policy server in the failover configuration, then you can add in this. Directory. Okay, so now I've defined one user store which I'm going to use, right? So I'm using a bind account to connect to that user store, and it is LDAP. So I pass my routine here, and what is the object I want to look inside the user directory is defined here. UID is equal to ID from the login form. So this value, let's say your user ID is like XYZ. When you log in and you pass your credentials, right? So that value from your form, that login form will come here. So UID will be XYZ, and then it will try to search in this routine. If it does not find it, then we'll get some error. This is user store, and DC. Let's see what that value which I created. Okay. So here I have defined the agent name, default agent name, default host name, right? That, and what are the location for the log file if I want to generate them. Then trace configuration file if I want to generate trace, right? And the other option I disabled since it's a lab environment. The thing is, domain. I have not enabled that. Okay, we'll go more detail on this for further sessions. Host directory and Then comes to domain. So here I created some domain for application. So domain is nothing is like root configuration of some application. So if you can give it a, any name, if you expand it. So we have some tabs. So first is the user directory. Uh, when you configure some domain, right? You want to add some user directory. So this is how it will know, okay, I have to go connect to this user directory. You can have multiple user store, right? And you can connect to uh, in the user directory. In the realms. Mm. So what I've done here is like I've protected the root resource. Sorry, I have passed here the agent name in the RAM. So it know, okay, this is the agent which I have to uh, check, and it is protecting the root. So I have defined some web agent action, cat to post. We will go in detail about all the web agent action and its enable and unprotect the SiteMinder login form. This I have done so that it does not protect the its login form. Then it's going to be in loop, right? You get the login page and you give your user ID and password, and you are redirected back to the login page again. Because the you are protecting the login page. So again and again, it's going to stuck in the loop. Okay, and here you can define the session timeout, which will go more in the details. Today we are just going with the overview. Okay, so idle and maximum timeout. Yeah, that's here in the policies. Policies where you define all the access, allow access, access reject or any custom policies. How you want allow access to some user that can be defined here. So I want to look for the users in this user directory here, and rules. Rules is like uh, what action it need to perform. So on the root, I have some rule defined here, which is web agent get put post. So web agent action get put post, right? It will protect these HTTP request coming from the web agent. So when you try to access some website, right? If you run a trace, then you will see your browser is doing get request, uh, get method to get some resource from the server. So that HTTP method, right? That we are capturing here. So get put post. So on that, if this thing is complete and user is authenticated and authorized, then what I am doing is I am passing some response here. So let's see what is the response I have. So some response I've created as some user. So what that is like user attribute, which I'm passing as some header, some HTTP header. This is the header name and its value is UID. Okay, so HTTP SM underscore user. This is HTTP header. So let me do private session. So this is my Apache web server URL. Okay, so it's protected by SiteMinder, and you see login.fcc login page is coming, which is the default page. So I will give my test user test some password. When I click on this, okay, so I'm able to access. That means authentication and authorization is complete. And you can see once that is complete, I have this value here in my browser, SM session. This thing is called SiteMinder session. This is a SiteMinder session cookie, which is the main thing in the SiteMinder world, SM session cookie. So as long as this cookie is valid and stored in my browser, and then I can access the other application with .lab.com cookie domain, and if they have the same auth scheme, right, then I don't have to pass my credentials, and what it will happen, right? The web agent flow will kick, which is something like that. You will log in, the browser intercept, the agent will intercept all the requests coming to the web server, and then it will check, is this URL protected or not? If it is protected, then does it has a valid SM session in the browser or not? If it is, if it has the SM session, valid SM session, then it will send to the policy server and see if that SM session can be used to access the other application. The policy server will do all the validation in the background, and then it will say yes to the web agent, and web agent will allow the access. So that's like brief overview. We will go in the more detail, how all this process is done. Any question or any doubt you have till now?
Uh, just one questions, earlier you mentioned that there were four parameter for seamless, transition
Mhm.
between application A and application B. So we covered like the user store needs to be the same, and it should be in the same cookie domain. Authentication levels will be same. So what is the
Mhm.
fourth one?
Um, so fourth one is like mm, so these are the protection level. So you have to have same auth scheme like HTML auth scheme, right?
Okay.
There are like basic authentication scheme, then your HTML, then your special HTML adapter, then you have JWT, JSON Web Token, right? So you have different option, what kind of auth scheme you want, right? But it has to be the same between for two application. So cannot use something like I'm going to use a basic auth scheme for application A, but I will use the HTML auth scheme for application B. Then it will break down. The flow will break down here. So you need to have same time of authentication scheme. Let me quickly show this to you. Think here. Yeah. The structure, authentication, auth scheme. So you see, I have some basic one and HTML. If I go to create some auth scheme, uh, click a new. You see, I have multiple type of auth scheme. So from basic to impersonation, multi-factor, OpenID, SAML, secure ID, blah blah blah. So this has to be the same. So let's say if you use HTML form template, right? This template has to be same between the two application. And once that is same, then it has the protection level, right? So this protection level has to be the same.
Okay, okay, got it.
Okay. Any other doubt?
No.
Okay. Okay. So we just covered this thing. I think that should be it for today's session, and we will pick it up from here. Then we will go. I have this document which I will send you at the end of the session, or maybe like as we go in the session, right? I will create this documentation so that it is easy for you to understand all the flows. So you can use this for the reference. So on the next session, we will go about the complete process, like how the request is happening, and then we look at the trace log and all those things. Uh, that will be complete in uh, the next session.